Now, a Russian will spend his 50th birthday tomorrow camped on the streets of Whitehall. He's been there on hunger strike for over 6 weeks. His name is Viktor Makarov, a man who made his career in the KGB, became a double agent for MI6 at the height of the Cold War, and spent 5 years in a gulag when he got found out. The British government spirited him to this country, but now he claims he's been abandoned, which is why he's been driven to a hunger strike. Tim Samuels reports.
A spy very much out in the cold. Viktor Makarov has now spent 6 weeks on hunger strike. Fueled only by tea, he last ate 43 days ago.
This hunger strike is a weapon of last resort. It can work only with determination. Of course, the realization of the righteousness of your case, without it, it will not work.
6 weeks camped outside the Ministry of Defence and opposite Downing Street, home to the very people he accuses of betraying him.
Very deceitful. Very deceitful. Well, look, since I came to this country, 2 batches of promises have been made. They were broken one after another.
A battle against perceived betrayal, which he's been fighting for more than a decade. Looking somewhat healthier, Viktor Makarov 3 years ago during another attempt to win recognition. His plight is an intriguing throwback to the Cold War and what happens to spies whose utility is spent. As an idealistic 20-year-old in 1970s Russia, Makarov joined the KGB. One of his fellow pupils at intelligence school was Vladimir Putin. At KGB headquarters in Moscow, he was posted to the secret 16th Directorate, which decoded intercepted diplomatic traffic from the West. By the 80s, he'd risen to the rank of senior lieutenant and was privy to the thoughts of Western powers. On one occasion, through an intercepted telegram, his department learnt that NATO would not intervene against Soviet suppression of the Polish Solidarity movement.
I think it was early November of 1980, and I remember I worked in one small room with the deputy chief of section, and on one occasion he just burst into the room with a scream, "Hooray! There will be no military reaction of NATO in the case of Soviet invasion into Poland."
David Kahn, former Yale historian and a leading expert on code breaking, confirms that Viktor Makarov's information was valuable to the Western allies.
I think Victor did pass valuable information to the British because not a great deal of information had come to either the United States or Great Britain dealing with Soviet code-breaking activity. Viktor Makarov was an asset to the United Kingdom government, no question about it.
But Makarov became deeply disenchanted with the Soviet regime, fueled by its repression both at home and in Poland. He developed a yearning for the West, particularly British values. Through his English teacher, he made an approach to MI6 and then began passing secrets to the British intelligence service. For 2 years, he spied for MI6.
The life in the Soviet Union was so boring, so grey. And now this Western world seemed so nice, so colourful. I was simply seeking light and was ready to die for this light. For me, Britain was the embodiment of light after darkness.
When you started passing secrets to Britain, you must have been aware that if you were caught, you'd have been killed.
Absolutely.
You did end up paying a price. Remarkable pictures from inside Perm 35, a Soviet hard labour camp, which allowed on a French TV crew in the early 90s as Glasnost was taking root. It was here that Viktor Makarov suffered the consequences of aiding Britain. Betrayed by a friend, he was arrested and sent to this notorious gulag in the Arctic Circle.
It was based on psychological aspects of your character, which were carefully learned and then exploited. Basically, the authorities try to create pain for the prisoner in order to destroy him mentally and physically, if possible.
As the crew film around the camp, all the inmates shy away from the camera until one has the courage to speak. It's Viktor Makarov.
When there is no dignity, there is no strength, and that's why they try to do that. There will be no dignity inside us.
After 5 back-breaking years in the Gulag, Makarov was freed in 1992. He was amongst the last 10 political prisoners being held in the Soviet Union. Within a week of his release, he made contact with the British authorities he'd been spying for. They arranged a meeting between him and an MI6 agent in Latvia. There, Makarov was given a false passport and, he says, promised that he would be given the chance to live not like a lord, but like an average English citizen. But after arriving in London 13 years ago, Viktor Makarov has not lived like an average English citizen. After long periods of living in bedsits with deteriorating health, 4 years ago he took legal action against the government and settled for £65,000 to buy a small house. But he says the promises made in Latvia remain unfulfilled, namely defector status, a decent pension, specialist healthcare to overcome the trauma, and the chance to work, which he suspects is being thwarted by the security services, which don't fully trust him.
MI6 aren't renowned for putting up interviewees to discuss matters of espionage, but through what can be termed government sources, we can glean some sense of their attitude to Viktor Makarov's case. As far as they're concerned, they've reached a final settlement with him, and he's been able to appeal to intelligence and security tribunals. So they've had their intelligence from their defector and have nothing more to offer for the time being.
Noga Offer, his solicitor 4 years ago when he struck the deal with the government, isn't impressed by this intransigence.
The difficulty is that when you reach settlements with the government, it's based on what you can prove in court and the kind of legal difficulties that you can have in proving certain allegations or sort of technical legal difficulties. And so a settlement was reached on the basis of what was the best that he could hope for in terms of what he could prove in court. That doesn't mean that there aren't still moral obligations that he feels he's owed. And I suppose, like most people who resort to these kind of protests, it's because all the legal avenues have been exhausted. I think the most important thing for him is to have some kind of pension so that he's not living out the rest of his days on the poverty line.
Another former Soviet spy who was told he'd live like an average English citizen, and seemingly appears to be. Oleg Gordievsky was a senior KGB officer who became a secret agent for the British and defected in 1985.
I feel very happy and very satisfied. The government treated me very well. They helped me to buy this house, partially, and they appointed a pension to me of an average civil servant, so I live all right.
From his house in Surrey, little sympathy for his former KGB comrade on hunger strike.
The British state is not a fat cow. You can't come to this country and demand money saying, I'm a KGB defector, give me money, give me every month money, and so on. It's impossible.
But from a historian who's researched Viktor Makarov's intelligence contribution, there is sympathy.
I believe that the government of the United Kingdom, which in that respect was probably the same as most other power authorities, took the information that Viktor Makarov had, wrung him dry, and left him to hang out in the cold.
Viktor Makarov turns 50 tomorrow. His birthday will be spent on the 7th week of a hunger strike, desperate to achieve the recognition of a country he feels abandoned by.
Public support is very uplifting. Public support is most important. I risk my life for these people, not for the mandarins who are treating me unfairly.
How long do you plan on taking this hunger strike on for?
Well, I'm afraid until the matter is resolved.
And if it's not resolved, will you carry on until you die?
Better to die nicely, fighting. I'm afraid living in humiliation is not my cup of tea.